Amen.
Good morning. This is a test of the UUFLB emergency broadcast system. If you look out your window, you'll see several feet of snow. Not. Just a brief explanation of why we're Zooming it today, and that is because Penn Ren did not want us to have a service there. They wanted to have the parking lots free for snow removal. So there you have it. So 5 years ago, almost to the day, we had our very first Zoom service. In this room, we're broadcasting from unincorporated Middletown Township, Pennsylvania. And I thank you for joining us. I am going to, with Avi's help, ring our bell to start the service. So welcome to this congregation. We are the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks, and my name is Gil. I have the honor and the privilege of being your lay leader this morning. And as we enter a new year, we are so very grateful for your presence in our beloved community. This small but vibrant fellowship has love as its foundation, as we live out that value by our acceptance of all those with whom we connect every day. In this hour of spiritual connection, we invite you to listen deeply to the message you hear, whether spoken or sung. For it is our sincere hope that this time together lends strength to your own personal journey. Let us now begin. Our January Soul Matters theme is the practice of story. Storytelling is a way to give someone an experience they haven't had yet, or maybe didn't even know was possible. We all have stories we live by that aren't fixed truths. They're just old scripts we've been following without realizing it. At some point, we have to understand that we don't need to carry an old story that is unbearable. We can observe the story, which is mental, feel the story, which is physical, let the story go, which is emotional, then forgive the story, which is spiritual. Brene Brown says, when we have the courage to walk into our story and own it, we get to write the ending. Our job is not to deny the story, but to defy the ending, to rise strong, recognize our story, and rumble with the truth until we get to a place where we think, yes, this is what happened. This is my truth, but I will choose how this story ends. Our guest speaker today is one of our A-listers, Mr. Mark Bernstein. And we welcome Mark. He probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him a real nice one anyway, because he's such a great guy. He's a former staff member with the Central East region of the UUA, and he continues his work with area congregations today as adjunct staff with the region. He is a 30-plus year veteran of the UU Church of Delaware County in media. Mark's sermon title today is Once Upon a Time, with this description. The pride, honor, and richness of our Unitarian Universalist heritage lies in its stories of inspiration, courage, and sacrifice. Yet many of these stories go untold. Sharing these tales helps to remind us of who we are as Unitarian Universalists and the importance of continuing the legacies of those before us. And now it is my privilege and my honor to introduce our musical genius and award-winning musician, Mr. Avi Wisnia, for our musical prelude.
Well, thank you, Gil. It was a very lovely introduction and good to be with you all. As to echo Gil, this does very much make me feel like those early days of 2020, but we've been here before, and it's in a way good to be back with you even when we can't be together in person. So as I play the music today, even as you're muted on Zoom, do feel free to sing along at your home or in your bed or on your couch or in your bathtub, wherever you're zooming in from. I don't judge. But we can still make music together and we can still hold spiritual space together. And as we talk about stories in today's service, you know, we all have incredible stories of where we come from, where our families come from, people in our lives that have done incredible things. And so this song I wanted to open with, as we head into Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend and day tomorrow. I wanted to focus on two particular stories in a song that I wrote with my good friend Hannah Rothman that hopefully can inspire and remind us of our own courage and conviction that we can all carry with us. And it's called A Better Way. On a bus in Alabama, Rosa paid her fare. She came upon a sign that said she couldn't sit there. And though her voice was weary, the driver heard her say, I know, we can find a better way. On a stage in San Francisco, as he stood before the crowd, Harvey showed us he could lead, honest, brave, and proud. And all across the city, the people heard him say, I know, we can find a better way, a better way, a better way. Together we can raise our voice and make a brand new day. If Rosa could and Harvey could, then surely we can too. A better way depends on me and you. As I'm singing here before you, I look at you all around. I hear that change is coming. The sound is getting loud. And now that I can feel it, I can add my voice to say, I know, we can find a better way. I know, we can find a better way. I know, we can find a better way.
Thank you, Avi. That was beautiful, as always. And now I would like to invite Sherry Christenberry up to light our chalice while I read our opening words. Spirit of life, we have come here today to remember what some are intent on making us forget. To remember a man who fought to end segregation. To remember a man who marched to counter prejudice and oppression. To remember a man who was filled with peace and hope. To remember a man with promise and a dream. To remember a man with a voice that rang out for justice and freedom. All these things we remember in honor in the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and a life well lived in service to all. May it be so. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Sherry Grissenberry with our message for all ages.
Thank you, Gil. We have a wonderful message today, a children's book called I Am Martin Luther King Jr. by Brad Meltzer to celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday. So I am Martin Luther King Jr. Even before I could read, I knew I liked books. My dad always talked about how I kept a lot of books around me. There is a power in words. Big words were in my future. When I was 6 years old, one of my best friends was a boy whose father owned a store across the street. My friend was white and I was black. It didn't matter to us. We would play games and have fun together. But when we started going to school, everything changed. He went to a school where all the kids were white. I went to a school where everyone was black. Soon after, he told me, I can't play with you anymore. I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. At dinner, my parents explained, it's because you're black and he's white. I was so mad that day. How could someone treat me differently just because of the color of my skin? I wanted to hate my friend and his father. But my parents told me to do the opposite, that I should love my friend, even though he hurt me. They taught me that it's better to have more love in your life than more hate. Then my mother taught me one of the most important lessons of all. You are as good as anyone. You must never feel that you are less than anyone else. I wanted to believe it, but every day I saw the opposite. I saw you could be treated unfairly just because of the color of your skin. If you were white, you went to a good school with great playgrounds and plenty of books. If you were black, your school was small, sometimes with no desks or even windows. It wasn't just the schools. Black people had to use different water fountains, different elevators, even different bathrooms. It got even worse when I was 14. I had just won a speech competition. My speech was about being fair to all people. I was so excited. Then, on the bus ride home, a few white people got on board. You need to give up your seats to the whites. At first, I stayed put. It didn't seem fair. But my teacher convinced me to move. We spent the rest of the ride standing and getting tossed in every direction. Every day, this is what life was like. Black people were treated terribly. The only question was, what could I do about it? At the age of 15, I started college. By 19, I became a minister and entered seminary school to study religion. Over those years, I read the works of Henry David Thoreau and Mahatma Gandhi. Thoreau taught me about civil disobedience and how an evil system could be changed without violence. Gandhi opened my mind to the power of love. It's using love and peaceful methods to change unfair things in society. It was a lesson I wanted to share with everyone. And in no time at all, I got my chance. In Alabama, a Black woman named Rosa Parks was told to give up her bus seat to a white man. It was just like what happened to me. But unlike me, Mrs. Parks refused. She was arrested. Early the next morning, I got a phone call from a local community leader. It's time to take a stand. It was just like Thoreau taught. Instead of using violence to protest unfair rules, Black people would use a peaceful method. We would not ride the public buses. And without our money, the bus companies would go out of business. But the question was, would it work? On the first day of the protest, my wife called me to the window. The buses are all empty. It's working. We had to keep it going. As the head of the bus boycott, I gave one of my most important speeches of my life. We are determined here in Montgomery to work and fight until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. When the history books are written in the future, somebody will have to say there lived a race of people, a Black people, who had the moral courage to stand up for their rights. The police put me in jail, saying I was breaking the law. Other folks bombed my house. But instead of using my fists, I kept my calm. For more than a full year, every Black person in the city, and some white people too, refused to ride the buses. That meant some people had to walk for miles, but they kept going. There was a power in standing together. Eventually, our peaceful protest worked. The rules were changed. Public buses could no longer separate people based on the color of their skin. But that was only the beginning. Soon our peaceful protests sparked other peaceful protests. At lunch counters, college students organized sit-ins where they would not stop until everyone could eat together. Our methods of nonviolence were so powerful, I was invited to meet with the president at the White House. Was it easy? No. No. During one protest in Birmingham, Alabama, the police again arrested me and locked me in a dark jail cell that had only one window. Someone slipped me a newspaper in which the white religious leaders had written an article calling us lawbreakers. Someone then snuck me a pen. In that jail cell, I wrote my own response in the margins of the newspaper and even on toilet paper. My letter from Birmingham jail was soon published as a pamphlet. Then it was in magazines and newspapers. Today it has been read by millions. Like I said, it's amazing how big words can be. Our message was so important, even kids joined us. In Birmingham, during the Children's Crusade, more than 1,000 kids, as young as 6 years old, showed up to march. The first day, the police arrested 900 of them. So the next day, 2,500 children showed up, ready to go to jail. This was our finest hour. Enraged that we were not giving up, the chief of police told the firemen to spray the children with water hoses and attack them with dogs. They thought it would stop us. But instead, as the whole country watched on TV what they were doing to our children, it was a wake-up call for the nation's conscience. 90 days later, the rules began to change. Now, Blacks and whites in Birmingham were using the same lunch counters, water fountains, and restrooms. You could feel it in the air. More change was coming. Freedom was contagious. By the summer of 1963, an estimated 1 million Americans held their own protests in cities across the country. People came to Washington, D.C. from every state, from almost every state. They took off work. They did not get paid just to be there. Old people, young people, Black people, white people, even children. They all came to Washington, D.C., gathering in a righteous army. Why? Because they wanted a change, and they knew the surest way to change the world is to stand together. On August 28th, 1963, I stood at the podium and spoke what some later called my biggest words of all. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Sorry. In my life, people tried to tell me I wasn't as good as they were, just because of the color of my skin. When someone hurts you like that, it can be tempting to hurt them back. You must refuse. When someone shows you hate, show them love. When someone shows you violence, show them kindness. To reach our goals, we must walk the path of peace. We must lock arms with our brothers and sisters, and we must walk together. I am Martin Luther King Jr. I stand for peace. I stand for justice. I stand to help others. I stand as proof that no matter how hard the struggle, we must fight for what is right and work to change what is wrong. Whatever struggle you face, no matter how hard it gets, you must always move forward. I am proof of this. If we rise up, if we stand together, if we remain united, nothing can stop our dream.
Thank you, Sherry. I think that was one of the most powerful messages for all ages I've ever heard. Really interesting to get the backstory on some of those historical events and just be reminded of what was going on when I was a young man and how far we've come, and also be reminded of how far yet we have to go. For our reading this morning,
Offering.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I can't read what's in front of me here. Our offertory this morning, our January shared plate recipient is the Reach Out Foundation, a safe and supporting environment for individuals with mental illness or addiction disorder and or homelessness. They are now a drop-off place for Code Blue participants. This program provides homeless people a place to be during the day. And with the insanely cold weather we've been having and will continue to have, this is a very, very important thing to help support. So we were going to have Sherry drive around to all your houses to pick up some, donations, and we decided maybe that wasn't the best way to go. So you can go to the website, UUFLB.org. You can donate there, or you could go old school and write out a check and mail it into the worship center. So, but however you'd like to do it, I urge you to support this worthy cause. So thank you for your generosity. And now I would like to welcome our A-lister guest speaker, Mr. Mark Bernstein, with his reading for this morning.
Thank you, Gil. Gil, can you hear me okay? Just checking in. Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry that I am not with you this morning. I also am sorry that I can't see any of your faces, but sometimes that's the nature of Zoom. But I'm glad that I have an opportunity to share this reading and my sermon with you virtually. The morning reading are the words of Mark Novak, who wrote, "People of faith understand the power of storytelling. We know that the meaning of our traditions are often best conveyed not by theological statements or scholarly arguments, but by telling stories. Through storytelling, the other becomes real, human, and knowable, and barriers between seemingly separate individuals are erased. Stories can open our hearts in a way that few things can." The words of Mark Novak.
Thank you, Mark. And now I'll have our musical interlude with Avi Wisnia.
This song comes to us from a songwriter named Julie Clark, and it was actually sort of an anthem, especially during the 90s and into the new century, for the fight for marriage equality. But if you listen to the words, it can really stand for any fight for equality that was started before us and will continue after us, and we carry the torch to carry it forward. It's called The Courage of Our Convictions. Oh, my dear brothers and sisters too, we're gonna make a change long overdue. We're gonna fight for freedom, we're gonna fight for love. We're gonna fight 'cause nothing less than equal is good enough. It's gonna take our time, it's gonna take commitment, it's gonna take the courage of our convictions. We're gonna need our families, we're gonna need our friends. We're gonna need a much higher power that transcends. Before it's over, before it's done, before our equal rights have all been won. It's gonna take our time, it's gonna take commitment, it's gonna take the courage of our convictions. It's gonna take our time, it's gonna take commitment, it's gonna take the courage of our convictions. And I know someday we'll be eminent, they're equal. And I know someday love will conquer all that hate. Someday the world will understand the lost change across the land. Until then, we're gonna have to make a stand. We gotta show them kindness, we gotta show them love, we gotta show them there's nothing here to be scared of. For civil rights that can't be denied, 'cause we've got love and justice on our side. It's gonna take our time, it's gonna take commitment, it's gonna take the courage of our convictions. It's gonna take our time, it's gonna take commitment, it's gonna take the courage of our convictions. It's gonna take the courage of our convictions. It's gonna take the courage of our convictions.
Thank you, Avi. That was beautiful. Now let us welcome back Mr. Mark Bernstein with his sermon, Once Upon a Time.
Thank you, Gil. Give me a second to share my screen. Ask any one of our children and youth taking a religious education class. Heck, ask any adult attending worship services. What do Unitarian Universalists believe? Chances are the answer you will get is, you can believe anything you want, right? Not only is this not true, but this tired refrain is one of the factors I believe that it has held us back from becoming a more dynamic and influential religious movement, and helps to account for the fact that our net numbers have not increased one iota since the Unitarians and Universalists merged more than 60 years ago. Believing anything you want is hardly inspirational. It's not dynamic. It's not sustainable. The quote, "If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything," first attributed to Alexander Hamilton, applies here. Reverend Robin Bartlett, in her sermon delivered at the UU congregation in Lexington, Massachusetts, told us that we as a religious body need to teach our children and ourselves that we stand for something. As if there is something at stake, she says, because there is. And relatedly, we very rarely talk about the heroes in Unitarian Universalist lore. Individuals who took risks, who dared to defy, who showed courage and determination in their efforts to make a difference in the world. People who stood for something. And perhaps if we told more of those stories, we would better understand what we as Unitarian Universalists stand for today. So let me tell you a story. In fact, let me tell you 4 stories. Stories of inspiration, courage, and sacrifice. Stories that help us understand what our faith tradition is all about. We begin in the year 1561. Don't worry, this sermon won't take 400 years. In the country of Transylvania, the newly crowned king, whose name was John Sigismund, ruled a country that was divided among 4 religions: Roman Catholicism, Calvinism, Lutheranism, and Unitarianism. They all believed and argued that their views about God and Jesus and how church services should be conducted were right. In an attempt to bring all sides together to air their views, King John decided to hold a formal debate. He invited the best speaker from each church to come to a place called Torda, where the debate would be held. It was scheduled for March 3rd, 1568. Representing the Unitarians was a young man named Francis David. The debate lasted 10 days and began at 5 a.m. each day. David's argument was that no one has the right to force people to believe anything about God, and that it's okay to have different beliefs and understandings about religion. After the debate ended, King John did not announce a winner. He did not say that any of the 4 churches was the best. Instead, he agreed with David and created what was called the Edict of Torda, which declared that every church and every person would be free to follow their own beliefs, even if those beliefs changed over time. David's staunch defense of Unitarianism firmly cemented one of our core beliefs: a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and the independence to choose our own individual spiritual paths. As a result of King John's ruling, Unitarianism was given legal recognition, and many Transylvanians embraced the religion. In fact, the king himself declared that he was Unitarian, becoming the first and only Unitarian king in history. As for David, he went on to become the first bishop of the Unitarian Church in Transylvania. But after King John's death, religious toleration began to diminish, and David's ideas were seen as more and more heretical. Eventually, he was arrested for questioning and challenging religious doctrine. He was found guilty of the crime of, get this, innovation, and condemned to prison for the remainder of his life. Francis David died in the royal dungeon in the castle at Fiba on November 15th, 1579. Story 2. You never know what the wind will blow in or which way the wind blows. The wind can change directions and maybe change your life. It happened to John Murray, a Universalist minister living in England in the 1770s. As a young man, John had excellent fortune blow his way. He had a fine education, a steady job, a loving wife, and a young son. Life was good. And then suddenly everything changed. His wife and their son became sick and died. John lost his job. He lost all his money, and he was put in jail because he could not pay his bills. He had been a very religious man who had even preached about a loving God, but now he was not so sure what he believed. He felt his life was over. Friends urged him to go someplace where he could start again. He sailed for America on a ship called the Hand in Hand. The wind blew the ship toward their destination, which was New York, but then fog rolled in and the ship ran aground in New Jersey instead. Oh my God, not New Jersey. John and a few others volunteered to leave the ship, go on land, and get directions and supplies. As he was walking ashore, John saw a farmhouse with a small chapel beside it. It belonged to Thomas Potter, a well-to-do farmer who himself had arrived at a Universalist theological position 20 or more years earlier. Thomas greeted John, gave him food for everyone on the ship, and invited him to come back and have dinner with him that night. When John returned, Thomas showed him the chapel. He told John that he had built the chapel and was waiting for God to send him a minister. You, John, he said, are that minister. I have waited for you a long time. Now, John didn't want to hear this. He was not a preacher anymore, and he was determined to never preach again. Yet Thomas seemed confident that John was the Universalist preacher he waited for, and he asked John to preach on Sunday. I can't preach on Sunday, said John, because as soon as the wind changes, my boat will set sail, and I must be on it. Thomas said to Murray, the wind will never change, sir, until you have delivered to us in that meeting house a message from God. If the boat has not sailed by Sunday, will you preach? If I am still here on Sunday, replied John, I will preach. So, boys and girls, what do you think happened? Did the wind blow? Did they hand in hand sail away, taking John Murray with it? Well, this wouldn't have been much of a miracle story, really our only miracle story, if that had been the case. No wind blew, no ship sailed. John Murray preached in that chapel on Sunday morning, September 30th, 1770. And John continued to preach universalism. He went on to found the first Universalist church in North America in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Universalism grew until at its height in the late 19th century, it was the sixth largest denomination in the country. But if it hadn't been for the fortunes of the wind, likely none of this would have happened. Story 3. One day, many years ago, a young African-American woman entered a streetcar and sat down. The conductor came to her and insisted she leave, but she stayed quietly in her seat. A passenger intervened, asking if the woman in question might be permitted to sit in a corner. She did not move. When she reached her destination, the woman got up and tried to pay the fare, but the conductor refused to take her money. She threw it down on the floor and left. The year was 1858, the city was Philadelphia, and the woman's name was Frances Ellen Watkins. She was born in Baltimore, the only child of free Black parents. During her lifetime, she was an abolitionist, orator, poet, and novelist. She worked on the Underground Railroad and was a member of the American Women's Suffrage Association. As public speaker, she traveled throughout the South, speaking on education, civil rights, domestic reform, and the need to bring an end to the practice of lynching. In 1864, she moved to Philadelphia and became a member of the First Unitarian Church. Frances was the first Black woman to publish a novel in the United States, Iola Leroy, and the first Black woman to publish a short story in the United States, The Two Offers. One of her most famous poems, Bury Me in a Free Land, goes like this. Make me a grave where'er you will, in a lonely plain or a lofty hill. Make it among earth's humblest graves, but not in a land where men are slaves. Story 4. James Reeb was born on New Year's Day, 1927, in Wichita, Kansas. Although ordained a Presbyterian minister, he eventually transferred to the Unitarian Church and became assistant minister at All Souls Church in Washington, D.C. in the summer of 1959. On March 7th, 1965, James and his wife Marie were watching television coverage of police attacking demonstrators in Selma as they attempted to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge on what became known as Bloody Sunday. The following day, Martin Luther King sent out a call to clergy around the country to join him in Selma in a second attempt at a Selma to Montgomery march. James heard about King's request from the regional office of the Unitarian Universalist Association on the morning of March 8th. That evening, after reading a bedtime story to his daughters, he boarded a plane to Alabama. While Dr. King, James Reeb, and dozens of other members of the clergy waited for a court order allowing them to march, James and two other white Unitarians, Orloff Miller and Clark Olson, went to dinner at Walker's Cafe, a Black-owned restaurant on Washington Street. After dinner, they walked to a meeting at Brown Chapel AME Church where Dr. King was expected to speak. They never made it there. As they approached the Silver Moon Cafe, a group of white men began yelling at the three men and pursued them. When they caught up, the attackers began kicking and punching the three, and one hit James on the side of the head with a stick or a pipe, causing him to fall to the pavement. He was taken to Burwell Infirmary, a Black-owned clinic, where it was determined that he would need a neurosurgeon. The closest one was in Birmingham, nearly 2 hours away. An operation was performed to remove an epidural hematoma, but it was too late. James was put on life support and died 2 days later. He was 38 years old. His death provoked mourning throughout the country, and tens of thousands held vigils in his honor. President Lyndon Johnson called his widow and father to express his condolences, and on March 15th, he invoked the memory of James Reeb when he delivered a draft of the Voting Rights Act to Congress. That same day, Dr. King eulogized James at a ceremony at Brown's Chapel. James Reeb, King told the audience, symbolizes the forces of goodwill in our nation. He demonstrated the conscience of the nation. He was a witness to the truth that men of different races and classes might live, eat, and work together as brothers. In April 1965, 3 white men were indicted for the murder of James Reeb. They were acquitted that December. The Voting Rights Act was passed in August of that year. 4 stories of inspiration, of courage, of sacrifice, of commitment to put into the world the values that we as Unitarian Universalists hold dear. The author Joan Didion put it simply, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And to that, I can only add, end of story.
Well, thank you, Mark, for telling us the rest of the story. Fascinating stuff. Thank you very, very, very much. Now is the time in our service when we recognize and lift up one another in love. Please keep an open heart and an open mind. And we're going to do it the way we used to do it 5 years ago. So if you'd like to share a joy or sorrow, I think it's easier if you just physically raise your hand and Mike will allow you to unmute yourself. So while you're gathering your thoughts, I will just say that I have a joy, just that we could be together today under these unusual circumstances that our emergency broadcast system worked. Yay. Well, okay, there's a man with his hand up.
Mark,
You can unmute yourself, actually, I think.
Thanks, Gil. Yeah, this is Mark. I wanted to share with you because I do feel so close to all of you after all these years of being together. My older son, I have two boys. My older son, Justin, towards the end of December, was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer. Both the colorectal surgeon and the oncologist are very optimistic that chemotherapy and radiation therapy will knock this sucker out and that surgery will not be needed. So we are staying very positive and taking it one day at a time. My son is having mostly good days, continues to work. He's an attorney in media here in Delaware County. And all of us in the family have bonded together to support him and get him through this. So please hold him in your thoughts and in your prayers.
We will do that. Thank you for sharing. I just went to the gallery view and I noticed nobody is
no,
showing their shining faces. So you will have to go, do I see it, the electronic version of raising your hand. And I see that Robin has her hand raised. And also the Kellys.
ask Mike.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
We can hear you.
If you could keep, I had a friend who had a heart attack and accident just recently, and keep in his mind, keep in our minds and hearts the Art Stubbs and his family. One other thing I wanted to say, we have a event tomorrow, and whether or not it occurs or not, I have not yet been notified. We were supposed to go to Caring for Friends, and I expect it might not happen. If it does not happen, I will let everybody know who signed up for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Like Anne has her hand up.
Good morning, everyone. It's a joy to be here. I'm glad we were able to have service. I'm glad Jeff read his emails and alerted me. Otherwise, I probably would be at Penryn right now. I just wanted to say thank you to Mark. Mark is a master at online services. I love seeing you in person, but I really, really enjoy the pictures that go along with your sermon. It was really enjoyable today, and thank you for all that information.
Well, Mike, oh, looks like Nancy Harvin might have her hand up.
Yeah, I had my hand up 3 times. I don't know why I kept disappearing, but it did. Every time somebody else talked, mine disappeared. So maybe may have to be a little patient with other people possibly too. I have 2 things, and I want to say, Mark, thank you again. I was hoping you would have your video, your shared screen like you usually do, because it is such an added interest to see how you do your Zoom calls and speaks to your speaker as a speaker. It's just another level that I really did enjoy, and I was surprised in such a short period of time you were able to pull that together. The other thing is I'm very, very sorry to hear about your son. I know that The good news is that the diagnosis is, sad, but prognosis good. So our thoughts are with you. I hope everything goes well.
Thank you,
The
Nan.
last,
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you,
you're
Ann.
welcome. I mean, you are one of our favorite people. We'd hate to see anything but good happen in your life. The last thing I want to say real quick is that some of us are taking a course with Libby, and it's she gave us a ton of material to look at and see and view and read, and it was amazing. Some people would find it overwhelming. I found it to be amazing because I guess I'm just in the right frame of mind right now. But there's a movie that goes very much with what we've been discussing today, and I watched it last night. And it's called Origin, and I would highly recommend everybody who is interested in why we have a class system, why we have people that are considered better than other people, at least in some people's minds, how this lady did some research and found kind of a reason for why we like to some people like to put themselves above other people. The elevation of why and who we pick on it was pretty amazing. Again, it's called Origin, and it's from 2023, so it's really a new story, and I highly recommend it. It's on Hulu, which I know a lot of people don't have, but it's also on Disney Plus. So it was part of Libby's packet. So again, highly recommend if anybody's looking for a really good movie. It was very insightful.
Thank you, Nancy. I will check that out. And Bill, you have your hand up.
Actually, it's Nancy.
Oh,
For some reason, we can't get both our names on there. But I wanted to say we're seeing our first snowflakes here in Montgomery County. However, it says it's 37 degrees outside, so I don't know what's happening. But I also wanted to add that our granddaughter is in an area where she's safe enough now to have unpacked and doesn't expect to have to leave her home in Los Angeles. Thank you.
that is good news. I think that's about it for our joys and sorrows. Thank you for sharing. Whether you shared or not verbally, for your joys, we in this community join you in celebration. And for any sorrows or concerns that you have, may you feel our sympathy and our compassion. Please join us for a rendition of Spirit of Life. Avi.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, Avi. We're going to attempt a responsive reading. Mike is going to try to put it on the screen, I believe. Ooh. And there it is. Excellent. All right, so Spirit of life, we have come into each other's presence this day, seeking a part of ourselves, knowing that we do not live alone, and knowing we cannot live fully if we are for ourselves alone.
We gather in thanks for the life and ministry of Martin Luther King Jr., not because we wish to worship him as a saint, but because we wish to embody his dream as a possibility we make real.
We gather with full knowledge of our shortcomings. Our lives set before us many tasks, and often we are not equal to them. We fall short of our own expectations.
We find we do not know enough. We are not always patient. We fall into anger. We cannot find the strength. We lack the vision. We wait in vain for wisdom.
It is painful to acknowledge our shortcomings, yet we are here, Spirit of Life. We are here, not always perfect, not always wise, not always just, but wonderfully and mysteriously human and alive.
We dedicate this time together to renewing our hope. May the stories we share give us courage. May the songs we sing give us hope. May the words we speak give us wisdom.
And most of all, may the touch of hands, the sight of faces, the sound of voices lifted in song and affirmation restore in us faith that this world may be made whole with all its people one. That's from the Reverend Wayne P. Arneson. Our closing song is hymn number 169, and you don't have to stand for it if you don't want to. We wouldn't know anyway.
You can remain seated or stand or even lie down on the ground if that so suits you, but I do invite you to sing along wherever you are, and hopefully this will help warm all of us up today and help fuel us into every day after today. Let us sing together number 169, We Shall Overcome. The 4 verses, let's sing it together. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand
Thank you, Avi. Beautiful rendition. As my assistant extinguishes the chalice, I will read our closing words. May the stories we tell name the largest truths of what was, of what is, and pull us forward to what should be, as stories were always meant to. That's from the Reverend Vanessa Southern. So our service is concluded, and for those of you on Zoom, oh wait, that's everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you next week in our usual place at Penn Rin. In the meantime, I'd like to thank marvelous Mark Bernstein for a very informative and wonderful sermon today. And we're going to open this up to everybody. They can come online. Hopefully you'll show your shining face, show us your video and unmute yourself, and we can have a little morning conversation as the snowflakes are starting to come down here. And I have a final, very important public service announcement for everybody. Go Eagles. Yeah. Go now in peace. Amen and blessed be.
And I just wanted to clarify that Penn Rin, in anticipation of this heavy storm, really wanted to have their parking lots treated this morning and did not want any cars there. So that's really why they canceled our service before the snow has even fallen. Everybody can unmute now, I think, right, Mike?
He's muted too.
Yes, everyone can unmute.
I wanted to congratulate the entire worship team for pulling this off so smoothly. It was really one of my favorite services.
Very nice.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. I from the story to the lay leader to the original music from Avi, and of course the sermon from Mark was just all great. So thank you all.
Well, it was quite fortuitous that Gil was the lay leader and I was the story reader today. And Mark is so adept at Zoom. We were lucky that was the what do you call it? The lineup for today.
Karma just let us know that it is starting to snow.
We can see it out the window, just some
yeah.
nice flakes.
I don't know what the temperatures.
I hope you think they're nice in about 3 hours. You're out there. Well, you don't have to shovel. I do. I'm
Yeah, me
watching.
too.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping we're able to see the game and nothing, that service doesn't get cut out.
Lose our streaming service. That would be bad.
Does anyone remember the Snow Bowl from 2012, I think it was?
I don't.
LaShawn McCoy, the Eagles running back, set a record for yardage in one game, which Barkley broke this year. But I don't. They were playing Detroit, I believe, in Philly, and we had a blizzard, and they played the game, and I was trying to get out of Springfield in Delaware County to get to Virginia, where I was doing a training class, and I left, I think, after the first quarter to head to Virginia, because down by Baltimore it wasn't snowing. So I figured if I got out of the Philly area, I'd be okay. I couldn't get out of Springfield. The roads were so bad and blocked up. I drove around for 2 hours, wound up going back home, watched the rest of the game, and then left that night. That's my memory of the Snow Bowl. Hopefully it won't be as bad this time.
I don't think so.
We got stuck.
Well, I'm gonna head out. It is snowing down here too, so I'm not worried about the snow. I'm worried about the ice afterwards. But it was great to be with all of you once
Thanks,
again.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks,
You're
Mark.
welcome. Thanks.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thanks, Gil and Sherry
All right.
and Mike.
Thanks especially to Mike Lee
Yes, thank you, Mike Lee.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you, Mel
and Avi.
and Avi.
Yes, well, you have the power to end the meeting, Mike, so.
Very well.
Thank you. Good to
Good
Good to see your
everybody.
faces.
Bye.
Go birds.
Enjoy the game.
Go Eagles.
You see?
Go wave, Karma.